My journey to learning Korean has been a long, winding, and bumpy 9-year long road. But despite all of the challenges, it really has led me to beautiful places. In today's video, I'm going to share my Korean learning journey with you. What worked, what didn't, and all the practical tips that helped me succeed. Make sure you stick around until the end because I'm going to share how speaking Korean in real-life situations was the key that transformed my entire learning journey. When I started learning Korean back in 2016, I was really just a bored teenager looking for something to fill my summer break, and I had Googled easiest languages to learn and stumbled upon Learn Korean in 90 days. I really didn't know it at that time, but that search kind of ended up changing the whole trajectory of my life. And today I've achieved Topic Level 5 certification and I've been living in Korea for 5 years. So I can pretty confidently navigate daily life, hold conversations with native speakers, and understand most Korean content. Now, even though my motivation initially came from pure curiosity, it evolved into something a lot deeper because I fell in love with the language, the culture, and everything that came with it. So what had started as a summer project became a very, very deep passion that eventually led me to move halfway across the world. There were very many ups and downs along the way, and what I discovered about language learning might actually surprise you, especially when it comes to vocabulary acquisition. Here's something surprising I discovered early on. Being able to read Korean doesn't mean you understand it. And that might not be very surprising to you, but I was learning Hangul, the Korean alphabet, which was relatively easy. And that initial success kind of deceived me into thinking that the rest of the language would be pretty simple, and it definitely wasn't. So in the beginning, vocabulary really became my biggest obstacle. Instead of tackling it head on like I should have, I jumped straight into grammar, and I was taking online courses that were very, very grammar heavy. So I kept telling myself, I'll learn vocabulary later. And later just didn't really ever come. So I felt like the traditional methods of learning vocabulary just didn't work for me. Flashcards were so repetitive, and it was honestly pretty boring for me. So I was reading Korean words, but I really didn't have a clue what any of them meant. So it was pretty discouraging to be able to pronounce those words but have no idea what I was actually saying. I think I faced a pretty major reality check when I first visited Korea in 2021 after having studied for 5 years. I really thought that I was fluent until I stepped foot into Incheon airport and met my first quarantine officer. Confidently, I stepped up and I said, "Oh, 안녕하세요," and he started explaining quarantine procedure rapid fire. I didn't understand anything, and that really shattered my confidence. I thought to myself for weeks that all of these years I had studied had been for nothing. But I didn't really realize that the huge difference was the textbook Korean and the real conversational Korean I was hearing. So while I was studying all of those grammar patterns and memorizing phrases, I really wasn't learning how people actually communicated in everyday situations. The turning point for me really came unexpectedly during a simple shopping trip in Korea. I decided I was going to speak Korean to the cashier, and they immediately complimented me. "어머, 한국어 진짜 잘한다. Your Korean is so good." And even though they might have been bluffing, that tiny bit of external validation really reignited my passion. I decided I was going to go all in. I listened more carefully to conversations around me. I analyzed what people were saying. I read all of the signs I could, and I immersed myself in the language completely. So that ended up helping me feel like I was 14 again, back in my own Korean learning world. Another major breakthrough for me came when I discovered Korean variety shows. Since I was really struggling to learn vocabulary with the traditional methods, I ended up scouring YouTube for full episodes of Korean shows, and I stumbled upon 슈퍼맨이 돌아왔다, or The Return of Superman, which is a show about celebrity fathers and their young children. Now, since that premise revolves around children, the language used was pretty simple and repetitive, so I was able to listen to those children's conversations and start picking up everyday phrases and vocabulary naturally. And I think it was pretty much the first time I felt like I could understand spoken Korean in context. What actually worked for me? Well, let me break down 5 strategies that made the biggest difference in my Korean learning journey. First, learning Hangul properly from the beginning was crucial. I'm really, really grateful that I listened to those early YouTubers who insisted on learning the Korean alphabet first. It helped me improve my pronunciation immensely, even as a total beginner. So if you're just starting out, this should probably be your first step. Forget about romanization and go into the Korean alphabet. Second, immersing myself in genuine Korean content pretty much revolutionized my vocabulary acquisition. So when I was struggling with the traditional methods, watching Korean variety shows like The Return of Superman really became my solution. And the language was simple, repetitive, and contextual, which was exactly what I needed to learn natural everyday Korean. Third, I stopped being afraid of making mistakes. Living alone in Korea meant that I had to use Korean daily even when I wasn't confident, and one of my lowest moments was trying to ask for 음식물 쓰레기 봉투, which is food trash bag, at the convenience store over and over again, but I just couldn't remember the word 봉투 or bag, and that real life experience kind of forced me to improve in a way that a textbook never could have. Fourth, I changed my mindset about setbacks. When I enrolled into Yonsei University's language program and was placed lower than expected, I was upset, but instead of viewing it as a failure, I decided to view it as a way to strengthen my core knowledge, and that really motivated me going forward when I was facing challenges. Fifth, and most importantly, I consistently put myself in situations where I had to speak Korean. No matter how many books I bought or courses I took, nothing really compared to using Korean in real life situations. So getting out there and speaking, even when I made mistakes, was what truly helped me improve over time. Now, one common myth I discovered wasn't true was that vocabulary is best learned through flashcards and rote memorization. So for me, contextual learning through media and real life conversations was infinitely more helpful than learning through isolated word lists. And often these language courses that I was taking would provide me with 30 to 50 new vocabulary words, which really felt impossible to memorize, but it was much easier for me to learn through context. Want to know exactly where to start with your Korean? Get our free Korean Learning Quick Start Guide in the description below. Now, if you're just beginning your Korean learning journey, here are the exact steps I would recommend after my 9 years of experience. Step 1. Learn Hangul first and don't rely on romanization. The Korean alphabet looks pretty intimidating, but it's actually pretty logical and it can be learned in just a few dedicated days of study. This will really help set a foundation and make everything else easier and improve your pronunciation from day one. Step 2, focus on practical everyday vocabulary before getting too deep into grammar. I think this was definitely my biggest mistake, and waiting too long to build a strong vocabulary foundation really set me back. So start with 500 to 1,000 high-frequency words that you'll actually use in conversations. Now, step 3, find authentic Korean content that interests you. Whether that's variety shows, dramas, YouTube videos, or even music, engaging with content that you enjoy, like I did with The Return of Superman, really helps learning stay sustainable. Now, step 4, take a structured course to understand grammar basics. While immersion is super important, having some formal instruction will really help you understand the patterns and the rules of Korean. So try to look for programs that balance grammar with practical usage. Step 5, create opportunities to use Korean regularly, even if you're not in Korea. Find language exchange partners online, join Korean language meetups, or simply practice speaking to yourself. Consistency is great for practice, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, and I think it's more effective than marathon study sessions. For resources, I recommend YouTube channels that break down natural conversations in Korean, Korean learning podcasts with transcripts, structured online courses that focus on practical Korean, and language exchange apps to help practice with native speakers. Remember, consistency is key. It's best to study with regular schedules that you know you can stick to, and don't get discouraged by setbacks. They're kind of a natural part of the learning process. Now, here are some practical tips that really help keep me motivated throughout my Korean learning journey. I set realistic daily goals based on my schedule. On busy days, I might just look over a few notes for a few minutes, and on free days, I'll dedicate a few more hours of intensive study time. Now, this flexibility really helped me prevent burnout, and it helped me maintain consistency. I also like to switch up my study method from reading to listening to speaking, depending on the day. For tracking my progress, I kept a digital journal where I'd write in Korean about my day or summarize a TV show that I was watching at the time. I also like to film myself speaking Korean because every few weeks I could look back at old entries and realize how much I improved even when I felt like I was stuck in the same spot. To stay motivated, I connected with other Korean learners and native Koreans online. It was really nice to have someone that I could use everything I had learned in conversation with. One technique that really worked for me was creating stories around new words instead of memorizing isolated vocabulary. And I'd create mini scenarios where I could use those words in context, which ended up helping me memorize much quicker. So here are some common pitfalls for you to avoid. Don't compare your progress to others. Everyone's journey is going to look different. And don't get trapped in preparation mode. You need to start speaking as soon as possible and put what you learn into practice. Don't sacrifice consistency for intensity. Small, regular practice is definitely more effective. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. They're really, really valuable opportunities. Don't neglect listening practice. Understanding natural speech is so crucial, and the biggest game changer was changing my attitude towards mistakes. I used to be so afraid of saying something incorrectly that I just wouldn't speak at all, and once I embraced all of those mistakes as part of the learning process, I was able to really accelerate my learning speed dramatically. Now, learning Korean has been an incredible journey. It has taken me through moments of self-doubt, frustration, and even really embarrassing moments, but it also led to immense personal growth in my personal life as well. So if you're on your own language learning journey, just know that struggles are part of the process. Keep going, keep pushing, and most importantly, keep speaking. So, what's your biggest Korean learning challenge? Let me know in the comments below. 다음에 또 봐요.